Welcome back to Extra Literary Affairs, a podcast for the lit curious reader, because why not read a little bit of everything? I'm Jennifer Smith.
And I'm Joey Kelly.
And today we are wrapping up our June of Art. This month we focused on stories and a novel that discussed different artistic mediums and shared some of our favorite moments of the story, as well as some favorite artworks. We kicked off the month with Circular Ruins by Jorge Luis Borges. And the second thing that we read together was Henri de Balzac, The Unknown Masterpiece. We wrapped up our short stories with Downtown by Zadie Smith. And the novel this month we picked was Spring by Ali Smith, which was just phenomenal. And so, Joey, I just wanted to ask you, first of all, did you enjoy our month-long exploration of literature that is inspired or brings artistic works of art to life?
I love when authors include visual art in their work if they're really good at describing it, as these authors have been. I really appreciate when a writer can do that and make me use my imagination to either put this together in my head if it's not a real thing, like in the case with Borges, or Google and research the actual works of art, like in the case of Ali Smith. She always references something that actually exists. How about you?
I love that we were exploring sort of all sorts of creativity and imagination that goes into creating art. And I think one of our conversations early on is, and I love this quote from you, art is not cut and paste. If you do not put some original content, a bit of your own self, your own effort into it, it's just reproduction. And I thought that was really meaningful because that came out in each of the stories in its own way. People being very imaginative and asking us to join them on that imagination journey. And I just really appreciated that. Joey, I would love for you to tell me if you had a favorite short story from this month's selection. And if you had a favorite, what was it about the story that stood out to you that put it in the number one spot for you?
I'm going to have to go with my boy Borges, okay? Because I'm actually reading a biography by Edwin Williamson. I'm taking a really long time to read it because that's typical of nonfiction for me, where I have to really sit there and pay attention to all of the information that's factual, or hopefully factual. But it's really interesting, and it gives a lot more depth to his work because, I mean, I'm only at his adolescence. He's only a teenager in the part that I'm in, but you can already see where he's drawing a lot of his inspiration for his work. And it's fascinating. It's over 500 pages long, so it's going to take me a minute. But very few people I want to read biographies for, but Borges is one that I'm like, wow, this is all really making a lot of sense now.
The little bit that I know about your boy is that if you're only in his adolescence, referencing back to our conversation last week, I think this is where his female troubles begin. I think he is going to start getting entangled in some complicated romantic relationships. So buckle in, Joey. It's only going to get bumpier from here.
Yeah. I mean, a fun fact, though, that I was not anticipating, not that we're here to talk about just about Borges, but he really didn't go to school much in his early life. He basically didn't go to school at all until he was older. How did you become such a genius? But anyway.
I think that is a commentary on the educational system, making your own opportunities. I think his genius comes partly from all the exposure he had to such deep and thorough and broad reading. So that's my thought process. Joey, I hope we can emulate some of his educational experiences because we too are too cool for school. We are not going to school currently, but we are definitely getting educated about all sorts of literary works and expanding our horizons. So that's why we're here. So for me, I really loved Downtown by Zadie Smith. I got really excited about reading that story. I think you can see behind me, I pulled out one of Zadie Smith's novels that I have not read that is in my collection. And I think that's what I will be reading next. I appreciated that she was so straightforward, down to earth. She's talking about these jealousies about watching a very famous artist do his thing and the awe in which he inspires. And people are like, oh, let me stand next to him. Let me throw this dinner party for him. And then she meets him and she's like, conversationally, he's really a dud. That did not go very far. And it felt to her that his isolation and his quietness was somehow a rebuke to her and her vibrancy and the way in which she lived her life. And I've been thinking about that a lot because I have to be on the side, I think, of the Austrian painter who lives in Hungary from the standpoint that he just stated, I don't know how anyone could get any work done here. I don't think he was specifically criticizing her, but she felt that as an attack. That was just an interesting thing to think about. And the flip side of that, even though it was a story that kicks off talking about an artist, it was such a political commentary of what was happening at that time in the United States that I'm still absorbing those messages and still getting really mad. It was a very powerful read for me, Joey.
I wouldn't expect you to have. I mean, I know you were like, yeah, I like this guy, but to agree more with him than with the main character. That's very interesting. It makes me think of in fashion, like the Coco Chanel versus Diana Vreeland mindset. Of Coco Chanel is like, take the last piece off that you put on. And Diana Vreeland was like, the eye has to travel. She's more minimalist versus maximalist. And I think that's a good representation maybe of either one of us, where I'm certainly a maximalist. Okay, I got peacock wallpaper, and you're more of a minimalist in this way. So that's interesting.
Joey, I want to be clear, expressing myself on this is that I think they both were 100% justified in saying, this is what works for me, and this is where my inspiration comes. I was recently in Philadelphia with a friend, and we're looking at all the Philly first. So many beautiful things happened to Philadelphia. First, she is from New York, and she was like, I really am enjoying Philly because it is not so frenetic. It is not a frantic pace. And for me, I'm just like, yeah, this has been fun, but I am ready to get back to some peace and quiet and some tranquility. So it's just, I think, very much a temperament thing. I saw so many beautiful things that have inspired me, including at the Liberty Bell, where someone had pasted up a Langston Hughes poem, and it was called To You. And there was all of this protest stuff got ripped down, but they did not, whoever was destroying these protest signs, they left Langston Hughes front and center, overlooking the excavation of the slave quarters that were put on view. It was just a very poignant moment. Poetry in the wild. This happens. This is not a novel. This actually happens in my real life. I just stumble upon Langston Hughes, and I was really excited about that.
That would be a good final shot of a movie, is Langston Hughes poetry overlooking all of that.
I took a picture of that, Joey, for you specifically because I was like, oh, Joey needs to be here in this moment with me.
We love Langston Hughes on this channel. We've talked about him many times, and we're going to continue to talk about him.
We sure will. Joey, did you have any unexpected disappointments or anything surprised you about a favorite that emerged out of the stories or the novel that we read?
I wouldn't say I had any disappointments because I liked them all. I would say that I thought I was going to like the Balzac story more because I do have an affinity for French writing. I'm not saying that he's not for me. I still enjoyed the story. I just thought I was going to be more into it because usually every time I read something French, I'm always like, damn, you guys get me. And this one I was like, it's still good, but it's not knocking my socks off.
I appreciate that, Joey, because the word that came up to me when you said that is like, sometimes, let's be honest, you and I gush over how much we love a particular writer. On two hands, you can list the number of people that we absolutely love and always talk about and think is so wonderful. What was unexpected as a surprise for myself is that I didn't hate that French writing. I actually was kind of into it. Even though he was trying to be very, I'm going to say, sort of practical and his style of literary realism that we talked about, there was still a touch of very sensual French romanticism in there about looking at these carved statues and thinking about time kissing them like a lover over the decades. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a French guy right there. That is definitely the French sensibility of let's make everything luscious and a little sexy. So that was a nice surprise for me that I could resonate with that piece of literature when I went into it thinking, I don't know. And at the end, I was definitely converted. That was a great story.
Vive la France.
Oui. It had some je ne sais quoi that I cannot explain.
It did.
Yes, my French-speaking friends are all rolling their eyes and plugging their ears. But, you know, we have to start somewhere. Joey, which character or scene from either the stories or the novel are just running through your head on repeat? Is there anything that you just can't get out of your head?
There is actually the scene in Spring that I discussed more in detail in that episode. So check out that episode when Richard is at the grocery store at the Tesco in Scotland and he's looking at a lemon and he's having this contemplation about the lemon. And again, I go into it and we talk about it in detail and at length in that episode. But for me, that was a very sort of visceral moment where I could imagine this guy pretty disheveled because he had just tried to commit suicide. It's not the nicest day out. He fell asleep in the van. And so I'm just imagining him like this older gentleman. His hair is all messed up. Maybe his shirt is a little wrinkled and slightly off kilter. And he's just in this grocery store having this moment with a lemon. This is a very necessary piece of fruit in his hand. He needs this moment to begin to heal from what he has just been going through. And that has stuck with me, this visual. I mean, I can visualize most things that are happening in a book, but for some reason, this has really stuck out to me. The desperation of that moment, it's a very intense moment for me, so it stuck out.
I'm thinking about the very tiny moment Allie Smith brought us to the scene where Florence is reunited briefly with her mom and she just leaps into her arms and Allie Smith says, this is the embodiment of the phrase, your heart leapt. If a heart could leap, you just witnessed that. And when I read that scene, I just burst into tears. I was so affected because, oh, that's so beautiful to be a young person and to be embraced by your mom. It was just such a beautiful moment. And as we discussed on our podcast last week, if you haven't heard it, take a listen. It's a pinnacle of happiness, which the roller coaster of sadness is not far behind.
Yeah.
And so I was just really affected by that. The character that has really stuck with me and I want to know more about is Patty. Patty is presented to us as a series of flashbacks of conversations over the entirety of her lifelong mid-20s relationship until her death with Richard. I love this woman and I wish she was my friend. I was listening to it as an audiobook. And so the way she was characterized, she has this really beautiful accent and a very sharp sense of humor. And I wish she was my friend because she reads everything. And Richard's like, why do you know everything? And she's like, because I read books. Don't hate me because I read books. You have equal opportunity. You too could have all of this knowledge. And this is how I chose to spend my life and had this great recall. I appreciated the interplay between Richard and Patty and his acknowledgement that she was such a fundamental person in his life. And you mentioned the event where he is holding the lemon and saying, there was a time when I felt joy. I need to be able to tap back into that part of myself. And part of that was that visceral experience with the lemon. But what happened prior to that is that Patty had passed away. And so he is really mourning this very fundamental, important, and beautiful relationship. And I think what I wanted to give a hat tip to Allie Smith, she does have a lot of very deep non-romantic attachments throughout the novels. And yes, I'm not going to say accidentally. Coincidentally, Patty and Richard did end up having one very good sexual encounter. And they said, okay,
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
that's that. Thank you so much. That was super fun. We're never doing that again. Let's get back to our friendship. And it did not derail them. I also really appreciated that Allie Smith was presenting this relationship as something fundamental. It wasn't a romantic attachment that may or may not last over time based on sexual chemistry and attraction. It was a true meeting of minds that just enjoyed playing with each other. They just really were very complementary to one another.
Yeah.
That's the person that I want to spend more time with. I'm like, Patty, I know you're gone, but in all of her novels, you can talk to dead people. So I'm just going to imagine what getting a postcard from Patty might be like.
I love how Allie Smith makes relationships and all types of relationships, whether they're romantic or platonic, because they're always complex and nuanced and very realistic. Like that could actually happen. These two people who admire each other are growing closer as they continue to work on a united project. Some sexual tension arises. They enjoy each other's company in that moment, and then they can continue on with their friendship. And I think every relationship she creates in all of her books that I've read so far are always so well fleshed out. They're always believable to me. I love reading about these dynamics.
And it makes me think that Allie Smith in real life is probably a really good friend and has a group of people around her that she can have these type of relationships with, right? She seems really grounded.
I feel like she's probably polyamorous. I don't know how I get that vibe, but she does give me that vibe that she's just like, I love a lot of people and I can be dedicated to a lot of people all at one time in an ethical way. Okay. Not like she's cheating on people, but I don't know. I made that up 100%.
I think that she would appreciate that we allow for all possibilities. So we are not commenting directly on what she may or may not be doing, but I do get that same vibe that she is very realistic about human relationships, about the messy parts, the sexy parts, the tragic parts, the miscommunication, the missed connections. She's really dialed in. I think that speaks to the type of reader that I am. I think also for you. I will say there was something I did not expect. So I have been listening to the 3 novels as audiobooks. And I have a very good friend from Ireland, a gentleman, and he read it. He did not listen to the audiobook. And the feedback I received from him was not what I expected. When I'm like, hey, how did you like the novel? I thought it would be like, oh, it was the most amazing thing ever. That is not the feedback I received. And I thought, oh, that's curious. So then when I was listening to it, I'm like, this is a great story. I don't get it. I stopped listening to the audiobook and I read some of the sections so much better as dialogue being heard as opposed to what was on the page. And I think if I had not heard the audiobook and I had just read what was on the page, it was a bit jarring. And I think you know the sections I'm talking about. She has these very vigorous scenes where it is like people screaming at each other on the page. It's a lot of curse words. It's a lot of derogatory things. Some of these things I've heard thrown at me in my lifetime. It just was very difficult to see them written. To hear the narrator on the audiobook, it made more sense. It felt like a one person's play. It was definitely dialogue heavy. And so I think that was the one thing that I had to experience it myself to get my friend's point of view, that reading it on the page in some way for me lost a little bit of the vibrancy. It was definitely something I had to hear.
I've read them all with each book copy. And I have never had that experience. So that's very interesting. I appreciate that feedback because it is interesting to get someone else's perspective that's very different from my own, because I never thought this doesn't work for dialogue. She obviously doesn't use quotation marks, which I feel like a lot of authors don't really do that anymore. I feel like Sally Rooney was really famous for it, and people are kind of like hating on her for that. But a lot of books that I've read lately have not used quotation marks. Bernardine Evaristo does that too. We read Girl, Woman, Other in our book club a while back, and there's really no punctuation in it as well. So I think it's less experimental now and sort of becoming a little bit more mainstream, maybe more niche to literary fiction. I've loved every single Allie Smith book that I've read so far, because she's a very similar style in her writing with all of those. And I've never felt like, oh, this isn't really working for me. I'm not really picking up on some of the nuance. I have thoroughly enjoyed all of them. But interesting.
I was also surprised because I have listened to them. Oh, it's so vibrant and it's so beautiful. And I think it's similar to a conversation you and I had had about Lincoln in the Bardo. You had read it originally. I had only heard it as an audiobook. And then I was like, oh, I have a copy of it. I should read it. And I was like, what in the world is going on here? I am so glad that I heard it first, because on the page, it was difficult for my brain to engage fully. I'm finding this a very interesting experience, as you said, reading authors who have made a conscious choice to make dialogue without the typical punctuation I would be expecting. And it's like, who said what? Well, it's the narrator narrating what other people had said. You don't necessarily get a lot of different voices. And I just thought that was just curious, just a total aside.
Yeah, make Lincoln in the Bardo a play and I bet I'll love it. But I can't read that shit or listen to it.
And we're not going to make you do that anymore, Joey. I promise. I
No,
promise.
I already said it on this channel. I cannot read his long form stuff. I have to stick to his short fiction, which I think is where he really shines. Okay. That's my opinion. I don't know.
Next month, we're going to read 3 short stories and 1 novel. Is there one that you're really looking forward to more than the others?
I'm looking forward to all of them, but I'll tell everyone, I'll spoil what we're going to read. Next month is obviously July and is the 250th birthday of America. Happy birthday, America. You're getting fucking cold. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, I don't care. It's not Christmas.
Birthdays, it's
Yeah,
canceled.
you're actually getting nothing. You were bad for 250 years and you're getting jack shit. But anyway, we're still going to read American stuff. We're trying to go as far back as 1776. Wasn't really possible for short stories. But if anybody who is listening or watching, if you know if there are short stories that go back that far, please let me know because I obviously did not do enough research then. Going by birth year for these authors, we're going to start with an author named Sue Sin Far, who was born in 1865. Still pretty early, to be fair. Okay, it's like almost 100 years after. And her short story, The Land of the Free. If that's not American, I don't know what it is. Then we're going to go to 1913 with Ralph Ellison and read Battle Royale, which is technically the first chapter of his book, Invisible Man, which I thought it was the second chapter. It sort of is because there's a prologue and then it's chapter 1. Also, Ralph Ellison died in 1994, so we were alive for 2 years together. So that's pretty cool. We're going to go to Louise Erdrich, who was born in 1954, and her short story, Domain. And then we're going to end the month with a brand new release called Earth 7 by Deb Olin Unferth, who was born in 1968. So not that much longer after Louise Erdrich. So what is my most anticipated story? Right now, because I haven't read Earth 7, so I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it because there's no preview, so I have to wait for my copy to come out. I'm really excited to read Battle Royale by Ralph Ellison. I love Invisible Man. I think everyone should read it. Maybe not high school, not because I think it would be inappropriate. I think they probably wouldn't really get much out of it. I feel like you have to be older to appreciate this, but everyone should read it. If you're an adult, you should read it because it's excellent. So I'm very excited to read that one. How about you?
Same, Joey. I have read Battle Royale previously. We have talked about it tangentially on the podcast before in reference to something Langston Hughes had written. So it was also this nice full circle moment for me. I think one of the themes that we were expressing, we had talked about, yes, it is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in the United States. And the question of who is America for? What behaviors are we encouraging? Who gets to be here? Who are we acknowledging that we are excluding? All of those things are, I think, going to come up in these particular pieces of literature that we're exploring. And so I'm really excited to sit with that in a fundamental way in July and think about what is the American experience. And I know we are preaching to the choir. We read diverse things so we can have more empathy and more understanding and get curious about what the lived experience of other people is like. And I think these 4 pieces are really going to challenge us in that way.
As I've gotten older, I have realized how much propaganda is taught to kids in school about America, where you're like, no, it's Candyland here. Everything's been great. I mean, slavery was kind of bad, but it ended eventually.
We got through it.
Yeah, Native American genocide. I mean, we gave them some smallpox blankets. Like, what's the big deal about it? None of this is funny, but it's funny that, like, as an adult, you have to be like, that was very much whitewashed, and that was not taught correctly. So I think that is part of my reasoning for wanting to explore these specific titles, because I think they all touch on this issue that I have found as an adult, as I've discovered more and more blind spots in my own education, specifically about the United States. So I think it'll be interesting to explore these topics with a diverse group of writers. As I said, they were all born in different times in the United States, so they're all experiencing different eras. I think that will add a lot of texture to our discussions.
We are both Americans. I am very proud to be an American. I was very excited to be born here and have this experience. But it's also like loving a difficult parent. You love that they're your parent, but you also are going to point out the things that were problematic in the way in which they were interacting with you. And that's sort of the moment I feel like I'm at, thinking about the American experience. We were sold a story as younger children. Everything America did was for the best because we're the best. We're always going to be the best. And you have to love being an American. Being American means you'll love America. That's one of the requirements. And as I've aged and seen more experiences, traveled internationally, received input from other people in other cultures. Yes, all of those things are true. However, you can't tell just one side of the story or just one person's side of the experience. And that has been really eye-opening for me. I'm really excited about July because we're getting in there. If some things were swept under the rug, we are taking the rug out, we're beating it on the sidewalk, we're refinishing the floor, and then we just might put the rug back, but maybe we won't.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, there's no reason to. Yeah, we're going to get the skeletons out of the closet. Every metaphor you can think of for this, we are going to not engage with American propaganda that we were taught as children and teenagers, and just the realities of what America is and was and where we're headed. Because we're actually, and that's fun too, because we're doing past, present, and future America. So that's cool.
I do love that, Joey. And there will be a little bit of fireworks. I think there's going to be some sparky conversations about what's happening here. So that is my one flag waving, sparkler twirling firework moment that we will bring to our July celebration.
Well, buckle up, everyone.
Be ready. Be ready. I think it's very important, like we have said this in the past, that we have very strong opinions. We are going to be exploring these pieces of fiction. I'm sure that there will be a lot of real world examples that get pulled into our conversation. And yeah, it should be very interesting, Joey. Looking forward to it.
So, Jennifer, before we end this wrap up episode, what are you reading outside of our podcast / YouTube channel?
So, I have two things that I am hoping to start this week, and I'm very excited about. One is this book right here called North Woods by Daniel Mason. It was given to me as a gift, and I have yet to read it. I have nothing to go on other than the person told me I can't even describe what this book is. I'm like, okay, I am always down for something that is indescribable. The second is this book, which I have not started yet, called Invisible Ink: Spycraft in the American Revolution. This is about what kind of spycraft was going on to create our amazing nation way back in the 1770s. And this is a dovetail, I'm hoping, to this fictionalized series that we've been watching called Turn, which is all about the American Revolution and the conflict there and spycraft in the early American colonies. So that's me, Joey. What about you?
There you go. Okay, buckle up. I got a list. I actually also collected all the books that I was going to read too. This is called Paradiso 17 by Hannah Lilith Asadi. It was on a list for some prize. It is about Palestinian characters and all of the atrocities that are happening in Palestine and have been. I've never even heard of this one. It's called The Wall, but I liked the cover, so I bought it. Sometimes I got an impulse buy by Marlene Haushofer. I don't know what it's about. It takes place in Austria, so how funny. All right. Yeah, we're going to find out what that's about. This one is a newer release, John of John by Douglas Stewart. Haven't read anything by him, but this is the second book I own of his. So that's fun for me.
Did you pick that book because there was a cow on it? Did you judge that book by its cover?
Well, I saw the cover and then I read the synopsis, and it's about this lady who's living in a hunting lodge. She's a middle-aged woman, so also that got me
Your
because
sweet
I love
spot.
that. Yeah, she's in a hunting lodge in the Austrian mountains in this area that time sort of stops, it sounds like, and she's locked in with some animals. I don't know what that's about. It sounds weird, but I'm gonna read it. This is Ali Smith's newest book, which is called Glyph, which is the same title but different spelling as the previous Glyph. So I'm excited to read that one because I loved Glyph. You're gonna see a theme for a second here because I'm reading all of Ali Smith's work. This one's called Like. I don't know what it's about, but it's gonna get read. Then I'm gonna read another Ali Smith, There But For Thee. I'm going to read these all this month too. It's going to be really fun. I'm currently reading The Book of Goose by Yi Yun Lee. So far, it's pretty good. It takes place in France, so there you go. And then, as I mentioned, this is not going to be read this month, but this is the Borges biography by Edwin Williamson. It's pretty thick, and it's full pages of actual information, so it takes me a while. But anyway, those are all the books I'm going to read.
That is an amazing list of books, Joey. And I know you are a voracious and pretty quick reader. So I don't think that you'll have any problem. If I get through my 2 books, I will feel like I have just run a marathon. So I am super
Yeah, well, that's
excited.
good.
We will be reading Earth 7, which is the novel
Yeah.
for next month. And so I probably need to make sure to pace myself appropriately so I can get those all finished in time.
Well, you know what? We're going to see if our wrap up at the end of July, if we read all these books. We got to put our money where our mouth is on this one.
We absolutely do. Thank you so much for bringing us June of Art. I was really excited to explore that with you. Looking forward, but also a little scared about our July selections.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. And if you like today's episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. We love that so much. And follow us on TikTok at Extra Literary Affairs.
Looking forward to seeing you next month. Bye.